Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. I spent many years in the Los Angeles area working in news. While there, I covered droughts, which led to brush fires, which, when the torrential rains came, led to massive mudslides and floods. Then there were the riots. And of course, we can't forget earthquakes. Suffice it to say, Southern California was a great place to cover news. A friend of mine lives in Florida. Last year, his property was covered with 6 feet of water due to a hurricane. He's still cleaning up. In the Midwest, they have tornadoes. Along the Mississippi, floods. In New York City, we will never, ever forget 9/11. The point of all this is that just about anywhere people live, things happen. Bad things. But I tell my friends from around the country that here in Western New York, we're pretty lucky. Tornadoes are rare. Earthquakes are a non-event. No major floods. And so, okay, Mother Nature tries to kill us once or twice every winter, but most of us would prefer a blizzard to a 7.2 earthquake. But just when you think you might be immune to devastating emergencies, you let your guard down. And then the unexpected happens, and you're in trouble. Without trying to be an alarmist, I think it's useful to remind everybody that every once in a while, it's handy to think about the unexpected. Talk to your family about how to communicate if the cell towers go down in an emergency. Where to go if you're not all together when an emergency comes about and strikes. There are a lot of things you can do to pre-plan in case of the unexpected. And know, too, that Erie County, the Department of Emergency Services, has your back. I know that because my good friend Danny Neaverth Jr. happens to be the commissioner of the Erie County Emergency Services. And while all of you are out there living your lives day to day, he's working in the background to make sure that things are in order, just in case. So today, I welcome to the Big Picture Danny Neaverth Jr., Commissioner of Erie County Emergency Services. He's going to handle everything, and I'm not just saying that because he slipped me $20 under the table. Welcome, Danny.
It was actually 30.
Well,
and earthquakes might not be a prime concern, but they're still a concern. So we do still have pre-plans, and we still do take a look at different things with regards to planning on all levels, including locusts, by the way. Many people realize that, but we also...
And any other plague that might...
Absolutely.
Biblical proportions.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, on a serious note, there are things that you prepare for every day, from serious traffic incidents to health hazards that pop up. Tell me about some of the things that you are prepared for on a routine basis that, people might not be thinking about.
Phil, I tell people that it starts with communication. It starts with dialogue. You can have all of the equipment in the world and you can have all of the technical expertise in the world, but unless you develop relationships. So what we do throughout the course of the week in my department is essentially work with other departments. To implement our plans, we have to be able to understand how your operation works. We have to be able to understand how the local government would be responding to that as well. So it's a collaborative effort. We work very closely with them to develop those plans. We say all disasters are local, and it sounds almost a little bit humorous, but that's the case. It starts in your town or your village or city. And where we come into play then is when you as a town exceed the disaster is beyond the scope of what you're prepared to do. You need to be able to reach out to your surrounding communities. There has to be a plan to be able to do that. There has to be a way of making those notifications. That doesn't happen on the spot. That's all done day like today. Beautiful sunny day, but we're going to have snow. We know that we have snow coming. So how do we coordinate that with our partner agencies at both the local level, state level, and federal level, so that in the event that something major or catastrophic does happen, that we know how to activate things to get those resources that they need?
And really, when you think about it, your job is probably one of the most complicated in Western New York because, you know, the city of Buffalo is an entity, the town of Clarence, the town of Hamburg. You have to coordinate with all of these different departments and all of these different entities. So you're really responsible for, you know, tying everything together, and there's just so many different pieces to the puzzle that you have to deal with.
And then you add to that the private sector as well that we have to be actively engaged with, the corporations out there for their continuity of operations, to have that relationship with them. Just because we're clearing 6 feet of snow out of a particular area, we also have to understand that the Tops and the Wegmans and the Rich Products of the world also have things that have to continue. The product has to get through, or once we open up those roadways, there has to be product on the shelf. So it's a public-private partnership in addition to all of the communities that we have in Erie County. And again, it's a dialogue. It's reaching out to have a discussion as to notifications. We're constantly reaching out to the smaller communities and saying we're here if you need us. They're reaching out to us when they do in fact need that. But in those times between, when there isn't snow flying or there isn't the potential for severe weather or there isn't a chemical leak, those are the times that we sit down and we talk about it. How do you efficiently request resources? How do you get resources to come to your town when everybody's asking for that same resource and there's a limited, finite amount of that available? So that's it's a coordination game, it's a dialogue game. In many ways, it's radio, it's television, but without the large audience. It's how do you perform and how do you coordinate that with everyone else?
Well, and speaking of coordination, when something does happen, whether it's a traffic incident or a fire incident, whether it's a health threat, could be a terrorist threat, who decides when you get involved and how you get involved? I mean, is it a request put out to your department, or do you observe something and decide on your own, or how does that work?
A lot of it is statutory responsibilities that come from different jurisdictions. Getting back to the all disasters are local. A terrorist incident in New York City is New York City's incident until they need additional resources. On 9/11, it went from a local disaster to a state declared to a federal disaster in just a matter of minutes. You knew based on the magnitude of that, whether it was terrorists or not at the point when the towers were hit, we knew that there was going to be a request and a need for tremendous amounts of resources that tap not only New York City, but the surrounding area as well. And I think what you also have to keep in mind as this is all being orchestrated with those communities is that you're focused on the fire or you're focused on the mass casualty incident maybe that's going on. But meanwhile, people are still delivering babies. People are still having heart attacks. People are still, the calls are still coming in for all of the day-to-day type things that on a sunny day like today come in. So how do you coordinate that? If I have 5 ambulances and I have 6 patients, that technically is a mass casualty. It's a disaster because where am I going to come up with that additional ambulance? Having plans in place, mutual aid agreements, and knowing how to connect the dots is what's absolutely critical. So you say, how do we get involved in it? If it's a health related, the county health department is actively involved in it because towns and villages and even the city of Buffalo, they don't have their own health departments. So if it's testing of water, if it's doing certain types of sampling, if it's doing surveillance to see whether or not the flu has expanded beyond that, that becomes a county responsibility and then working in conjunction with the state health department. What we do is we push out our number of resources, the availability of those resources as they are requested by the municipalities. And it's a two-way dialogue. We'll give a call to a town or a village and say, we understand this is going on, how can we help? We have mobile command units, we have ATVs, we have communications trailers, we can set up ad hoc networks if we need to with 2 communication 100-foot towers. It's them knowing what our resources are, hopefully reaching out in the event that they need them, and then it's us allocating those based on the disaster or the incident itself.
You know, of all the guests I've had in here, the surprise that I've had, when I had the sheriff in and I've had the county clerk, it amazes me that Erie County provides services on many different levels from many different departments that really a lot of people don't know about. And for instance, in your department, I was doing a little research and you have a citizens corps. Explain to me a little bit about that, because I wasn't aware that citizens can get involved on a voluntary basis.
Sure. So what we actually have on the county level, working Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, working in conjunction with the Erie County Health Department, we call it SMART, Specialized Medical Assistance Response Team. It is it's nationwide. It's the core. But this is our own branding of that. So if a person has particular skill sets, or if they would like to learn a particular skill set to be able to assist us, what we do is we have different sectors. We've got veterinarian sectors with regards to the SMART team. So you join the team, you become a person who will assist us in the event of deployment, and we've had deployments after incidents in other areas, down to the Binghamton area to assist with some of their shelters. Down to Long Island after some of the storms, that Superstorm Sandy. So you can join the SMART team, and then now you're rostered. We do trainings and teach people what they need to know to assist us on that team. And then there's the Citizens Emergency Response Teams that local communities actually absorb. There's training that's available through FEMA and through the state. To get people so that in the event that something catastrophic happens, that's the next layer of first responders, so that, well, the firefighters and the emergency managers and law enforcement are dealing with the main portion of that catastrophic event. The Citizens Emergency Response Team is available then to go and if you check on the neighbors, make sure those that in the neighborhood that people don't need any extra assistance, or just to be there as assistance in the event of those disasters. So it's a different layer for maybe people that don't want to rush into a burning building or have to deal with some of the chaos that takes place during those disasters. There's plenty for everyone out there to do. Everyone has something to offer, and our SMART team would be great for that.
Well, we're just scratching the surface. That's it for this segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the other services and a very fascinating app that's available that I'm sure a lot of people don't know about, that in today's age of smartphones might be very helpful to people planning and in the event of a national emergency. We'll be back right after this.